Okay, Bill Gross here, the LAProbateExpert.com. And today we talk about every Monday afternoon, we talk about converting buyers into contracts. So if you're a real estate agent, and you're writing offers, or you're getting offers as a listing agent, or you're a buyer presenting a property, it's a competitive market. And the question is, what do you do to get your offer accepted? Whether it be a seller at a better price, a buyer at get in a competitive situation, or you're a buyer and get your offer accepted. So I'm going to share a couple of things. One is focus on closing the gap. You know, one of the things, every single seller wants more for their property than it's worth. Now, sometimes in hot markets they can get it. They're surprised. But generally they want more than it's worth, and every buyer wants to pay less. And so you have a seller and a buyer bid ask, or I say bid and ask. And the gap, as an agent, your job is to close it. Or as a buyer, you want to close that gap. As a seller, you want to close the gap. So a couple of things you have to do. One is, in a normal market, you have to work to close the gap. For the last year and a half, 2 years, the demand was so insane. As a listing agent, you just pick amongst the offers. As a seller, you'd pick the best offer and move on. As a buyer, how much guts do you have? And you would blindly close your eyes, make an offer, and hope it got accepted. But now the market still is very, very, very competitive. But in some pockets, there's definitely some more normalcy. And maybe it's a pause because, frankly, rates dropped down and we've seen more offers going into escrow. But your job as the buyer is to get your offer accepted. So, for example, what does that mean? Just yesterday, I had a friend of mine buying in another state. I could represent them, but I coached them up and their agent as well. They were making an offer, and the seller wanted to do a rent back for 30 days. And I said, well, what are you doing to protect yourself so if the seller doesn't move out, you get control of the property? And they said nothing. The agent didn't even bring it up to them. I said, no, you have to have some control in there, but not now. Wait till your contingencies are expiring. When you waive contingencies at that time, you want to present. The seller leaves some money back as a holdback, maybe 1 or 2 months worth of rent. Seller agrees to pay X amount per day after 30 days until they're out. So some penalty provisions in there. And if the seller balks, you would just say, hey, you said you'd be out by that day. We're just trying to guarantee that happens. But at that point, the buyer has leverage. When you're making the offer, the last thing a seller wants is a knowledgeable buyer who's strong and knows what they can get away with. So you want to get your offer accepted if you're the buyer and then negotiate. On the seller side, it's the opposite. You want to get the buyer tied in as tight as you can up front. And so you want a proof of funds. You want to know who the buyer is. You don't want them shopping your deal around. Those are the most common problems I see in today's market. You don't want a cash offer without verifying the cash to find out they're getting financing and they're delaying because they can't get financing. That's the key part. So again, the focus is you have a bid and an ask, and we're trying to close that gap to get into a contract. And your job as a buyer is to make your offers as acceptable as possible, as a seller, to be as accommodating as you can be without losing control or terms. And you want to get the buyer tied in as quickly as you can. The buyer wants to get in the contract when they have leverage then, and the seller needs to be careful and get the buyer locked in when they can to get the deal closed. And that's the essence of what we do. And there's a lot of details to that. If you focus on the goal, the buyer getting into escrow, if the seller vetting before you get into escrow makes you get the right buyer to take it through to the end. In fact, the statistic I heard is 2/3 of escrows change terms and price from the escrow period to the closing. So you want to check those numbers beforehand. So if I can help, feel free to reach out to me on Bill Gross, the LAProbateExpert.com, and look forward to helping you on social media at Bill Gross EXP. Make today your best day ever.